Thank you. Thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for being here on a really cold night in Los Angeles. So it is good that you are here, and I hope you have a cup of warm and delicious hot chocolate, and you're in your fuzzy slippers and your sweatpants and your t-shirt that you wore from this morning. Well, maybe I'm talking about myself. Anyway, I'm just happy that you're here tonight. Thank you so much for being here at the Story Salon. So much gratitude. And actually, before we start, though, I need to do some important shout outs to people, and particularly the lovely and the talented and the ever so creative Amber Greenberg that makes all of this happen, makes all of this possible. Huge shout out to her. Thank you, Miss Amber Greenberg. Woo! Gratitude to you, the face of the future, ladies and gentlemen. Amber Greenberg, thank you. Thank you. And if you're here for the first time, and I kind of hope you are, because you're just thinking, what is there to do tonight? There's nothing on Netflix. I know. I'll go to the internet and I'll find out what's going on. So if you're here for the first time, welcome, because what we do is we tell stories, every kind, every way, every shape. We have some tremendously amazing storytellers for you tonight. We do this on a regular basis. We do this once a month. So go to our Facebook page and find out how you can be a member of the Story Salon, and you'll find out about all the wonderful things that we're doing. And we got some really fabuloso shows coming up in February and March that you will not want to miss. Trust me on this. I'm very grateful for all the storytellers tonight. We have an eclectic and a wonderful group. And I say we ought to get started. Mm-hmm. You don't need any more out of me. You just need to hear these terrific storytellers that will make you feel all warm and cozy and wonderful inside. Not that you're not already, but even warmer and cozier and more wonderful on a night like this in Los Angeles. And we're going to start with one of our very, very favorite storytellers. I adore this woman. She has been a mainstay of the Story Salon for quite some time. Not just her story, she has written a book, Confessions of a Geriatric Prom Queen. Everybody loves this book. I suggest that you grab it, go on Amazon, get the book, hand it out to your friends. They will devour it. She is an exceptionally fine storyteller. And this is the thing about Lila, is that in such a strange and uncertain and sometimes cold and dark world, she is a fine, good, wonderful thing. Please welcome her, Miss Lila Children.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? No, I'm unmuted.
You're good.
Oh, I'm good. Okay. I know that I'm often thought of as a well-adjusted, retired school teacher type senior person, but I wasn't always this way. The story that I'm going to tell is the first story I ever told at the Coffee Fix. And maybe my last story too, if this doesn't work out. And I especially want to thank Beverly and Ellen Switkiss and the late Steve Robinson, because after I told that first story, they encouraged me to tell other stories. And from that, I got the book. So this story, and I'm going to try to do it without, oh dear, without paper. Here we go. Perfect timing. In my earlier years, I suffered from an assortment of paralyzing neuroses: agoraphobia, claustrophobia, freeway phobia, chronic back pain, migraines, and a very shitty marriage to a math teacher who liked to give me math tests in supermarkets. Compare the price of these 4 rolls of toilet paper that are on sale with the 6 rolls on the shelf, he would demand. Oh, and I would break out in a sweat, and I'd begin dividing and multiplying on my palm. I failed every time, and I was getting sicker and less confident about ever being able to do better and be able to drive on the freeways or shop in a department store again. Having lost weight, sleep, and a lot of confidence, I was referred to Dr. Z, a neighborhood psychiatrist who was gentle, kind, and a wonderful listener. He prescribed Valium and scheduled appointments every Tuesday for 3 tearful but therapeutic years until I was strong enough to leave the house, drive to a lawyer, and get a divorce and a job. I'd been on my own for about 6 months and really proud of the progress that I was making. I was balancing a checkbook, shopping in crowded supermarkets, riding in elevators and on escalators, and almost ready for the Golden State Freeway, which I had described to the good doctor as the man's freeway, with all those big trucks on my tail, honking and puffing testosterone on my rear end. We all go through some with life with some psychic imperfections, but some of us learn to cover up the limp better than others. I really wanted to share my successes with Dr. Z. I started a few letters and thank you cards, but I never sent them. I wanted to see him, but not in his office where I'd been a patient. I just needed to get up the nerve to call. I needed a sign from a higher power or an astrology chart. The sign came to me one particularly beautiful morning. First, I read my horoscope in the LA Times. It said, "Your intuition in nudging you to tell someone your feelings. Don't hesitate. Trust your instincts and make the first move." The second sign came like a religious epiphany when I pulled into a service station, realizing that my gas tank was almost empty. I was about to say my usual $2, please, but before I could, the station owner came over to the window and said, "There's a gas war on, lady. Gas hasn't been this cheap in years. It's down to 35 cents a gallon." You can tell this story happened a long time ago. I changed my mind. "Fill her up," I said, and realized those were the high signs I needed to make that call to Dr. Z and ask him out for lunch. I called him 5 minutes before the hour and his next patient, and he was surprised to hear from me. I'm doing well," I told him. "I'm doing very well. I'd like to meet you for lunch and tell you all about it." Well, I don't usually go out to lunch," he stammered professionally, rather taken aback by my invitation, but there was a long pause as he checked his calendar, and he finally came up with a date for the next week and a meeting place I could get to without driving on the 405. I was so excited and nervous about seeing him outside his office that I had a recurrence of anxiety symptoms. What to wear, what to wear. I changed from beige to red and black to rather a neutral beige. I wasn't completely cured. And my hair, oh, it looked so drab and plain and stuck out like I had just had shock treatment. I made an appointment at a fashionable hair salon to get it styled before I met him. Another panic attack, rapid heartbeat, Valium. As I sat nervously waiting in the salon, suffering from premenopausal hot flashes, a very attractive woman who appeared to be one of the steady customers was just leaving. Her platinum blonde hair was freshly coiffed in the bouffant style popular at the time. Her long nails were a striking shade of fuchsia, with her lips a matching color. She looked glamorous and sophisticated in a perfectly tailored short wool skirt and high white boots. She looked like a movie star. She smelled of Virginia Slim cigarettes, Arpege cologne, and Revlon hairspray. I was sure she was off to lunch with a producer or director at the Polo Lounge in the Beverly Hills Hotel. I stared glumly in the mirror and I felt very beige as the hair person gave me the quickie standard boyish bob that looked nothing like the chic page boy I had described. I was beginning to think this lunch was a big mistake. Maybe I should have gone to his office as a patient returning to have the psychoanalytic stitches and staples removed. Maybe I should have just sent a note, a thank you card. No, I had to go through with it with the plain hairstyle and the smudgy glasses and the fingernails with the nail polish peeled off and nervousness. Dr. Z was waiting near the entrance of the restaurant in Encino, a few blocks from his office. He looked shorter away from his desk and a little older, but still attractive with the thin mustache, graying temples, horn-rimmed glasses, and tweed jacket. We were led to a leather booth in a room fashionable at the time when people drank scotch and ate steak at restaurants owned by former football players. Well, how are you doing? He asked in his wonderfully deep, soothing, sexy voice. He lit a cigarette. Well, a little nervous, Dr. Freud, I answered, about to collapse on the couch-like seat. Before I could, we were handed menus and asked if we'd like anything from the bar. The voice was waitressy, but the smell wasn't. I whiffed. I sniffed. It was Virginia Slim's Arpege and Revlon hairspray. The fingers holding the order pad were tipped bright fuchsia. I looked up. Even in the dim light of the restaurant, I recognized her. She hadn't gone to the Polo Lounge for cocktails after all. She was serving them instead at this bistro. I was the lady in soft beige with the natural wind-blown hair sitting across from the elegant gentleman in the fashionable restaurant in Encino, about to order a Chardonnay and throw away the Valium. That lunch was worth a year of therapy. You could hardly notice the limp as I left the restaurant and drove home on the 101 at rush hour. For more information about the lunch and what happened after, get the book at Amazon, Confessions of a Geriatric Prom Queen. Thank you.
Lila,
So cute.
Lila Silverin, thank you so, so much. That was wonderful. Thank you, Lila. You know, and I feel like a biggest dope in the world. I forgot to mention that tonight is a theme night, and the theme is this was the right time, it was the right place, and that was perfect, right. Lila. Thank you so much.
And it's true. It's a true story.
And it's true. It's true. And let's be honest. I throw this out to the group. How many of us really want testosterone on our rear end? Raise your hand. Not I. Not I. Not I. All right. So thank you, Lila. Thank you for kicking us off, baby. I appreciate it. I'm so used to, as a host said, I'm going to bring up, but this is still bringing somebody up in a way. This man, I think you can really call Richard a Renaissance man because he has many talents. He is a collector of terrific books. He is an amazing photographer. He is an exceptional storyteller. He does many, many things. He is just swell, and I am more than delighted that he is here tonight. Welcome him, Mr. Richard Johnson.
Hi. This is also, like Lila's, a story that has been told before at the Story Salon, but almost 10 years ago. I told it right after it actually happened. This is called Driving with Ray. I've grieved the slow, arduous death of the brick and mortar bookstore for decades. One by one, many independently owned bookstores have lost their lives to the chain bookstores and technology. Ironically, the chain bookstores are now dropping like flies, with the internet and the mighty Amazon eating away at their base, and e-readers driving the knife into their greedy little hearts with a coup de mort. It's unfortunate that with the loss of these independent bookstores, we've been losing the chance to meet many of our literary heroes, and in my case, the chance to assist them during their signings, and in a few rare instances, get them to their signings. It's not often that when a person's life, when they get to have a little one-on-one time with a legend. But on Saturday, September 8th, 2007, I got 25 minutes alone with Mr. Ray Bradbury. He was signing at the mystery bookstore where I used to work on weekends, and since Ray doesn't drive, I was allowed to go to his home in Cheviot Hills and bring him back to our bookstore. Now, I've helped Ray before when he signed at our store, so he knew my face, but pretty much only as one of the staff. So anyway, the night before, I was up until 2 a.m. nervously alphabetizing my DVD collection and worrying about what I was going to talk to him about on the drive in. I was being given a rare opportunity, and I didn't want to come off as just another one of his fans, even though I was. I knew I didn't want to make myself look like too much of an idiot, like the time when I was working a signing with him, and I told him that I thought the computer-generated cover for the British edition from his From Dust Returned was just as cool as the Charles Addams cover as the American edition. He vehemently disagreed with me on that one. Basically, I wanted to come off as knowledgeable of his work and life, but not a total spastic geek, and I decided on 2 things. One, to ask him if he ever passed on Mr. Electro's blessing that he had received as a 12-year-old to any other person, and 2, I was going to tell him the story of how, when I first got to Los Angeles almost 30 years before that, I had gone to one of his signings at the now defunct Change of Hobbit. How at the time, I had told him I was trying to become a writer and how he had graciously given me one of his business cards and said, call him. But for whatever reason, I was never able to work up the courage to do so. It wasn't much, but it was something, and it finally allowed me to shut my mind off and get some sleep. While I was standing in his house the next day, I wisely realized that they'd both be incredibly stupid things to say, and that it might be best for me to just keep my big mouth shut. Ray was running a little late, so his housekeeper, Teresa, told me that it was okay to look around the lower level of his house until he was ready. Now, several years before, the beginning of his television show, the Ray Bradbury Theater, would open with him strolling into his workspace. I remember that it was crowded with all sorts of memorabilia, toys, props, and other mind-blowingly cool stuff. In reality, his house was modestly decorated, and though there was art on most of the walls and a plethora of books, mostly his, and a few art books and toys and awards, I was starting to feel a little gypped. Here I was expecting Andrew Wyke's study from the 1972 version of Sleuth with Laurence Olivier, and all I was getting was a slightly cluttered version of the living room, not the attic, in Beetlejuice. Then I got a good look at the art that was hanging on his walls. First thing I discovered was the cover art from the Illustrated Man. It was from the book club edition of his book, and he didn't actually know who created it, but it was still one of his favorites. There was also 2 originals by Joe Muganani. Neither were used as cover art for any of his books, but his original painting, The Caravan, that Ray then owned, gave him the metaphors for his book of Something Wicked This Way Comes. He had a watercolor and ink painting of an ice dragon by William Stout, an artist whose work I've always admired and have always wanted to own a piece of, and 3 oil paintings by an artist by the name of Yvonne Earle, best known by most in Hollywood as a background artist on Walt Disney's feature Sleeping Beauty and art director for a couple of Cecil B. DeMille's features back in the 1920s. I was allowed to take a few photos around his place, then Ray was ready to go. After Teresa and I got Ray and his walker loaded into my car, we were off. Initially, Ray was fairly quiet, which was not a natural state for him. So I decided I would compliment him on his home. He smiled and told me that he had gotten it at just the right time. He'd paid about $40,000 for it and purchased it because it was one of the few homes he could find in Los Angeles that had a basement. And until a few years ago, when he had his stroke, that's where he used to do all his work. A basement, I thought. That's where all the cool stuff must be. When I told him how much I enjoyed the artwork hanging around his house, he really lit up. He talked about how art had changed his life and why he loves certain pieces. When I asked him about the Earls, he told me how much he had thought and told him how much I thought they were reminiscent of Grant Wood's work. He complimented my eye and told me how he had recognized the style from Sleeping Beauty. He had found the Earls in a gallery in the marina and had not been able to afford them at the time, so he made a deal with the owner to pay it off a little at a time until they were his. He smiled as he told me he had an original Sleeping Beauty cell upstairs with one of Yvonne Earle's original backgrounds. This advanced us into talk about his friendship with Walt Disney. A few years before Walt Disney's death, Ray recognized him while the two were gift shopping, and Walt told Ray that he knew who he was, then invited him to lunch the very next day. They became fast friends. How, towards the last days of his life, Walt had spoken to Ray to tell him how thankful he was for all he had done for his company. Ray was fairly instrumental in the design of the Epcot Center in Florida, uh, and Disney wanted to know what he or the company could do for him. Ray asked Walt to open the vaults. Walt got on the phone. A couple hours later, Ray was allowed to walk out of the vaults with an armload of cells from Sleeping Beauty and a few other cartoons. We talked Disney and art all the way to the bookstore. The signing was a success. 70 or so people showed up to wish Ray a happy birthday and to get a signature on his new book, Now and Forever. I was a little disappointed when a friend of Ray's showed up and offered to take Ray home for us. I'd hoped to get to see a little bit more of his house and have a chance to talk a bit longer with Ray, but what could I do? Ray signed my book last, and after helping him to his feet, he turned to me, shook my hand, and told me that the ride over was one of the most interesting conversations he had had in a while. And then he thanked me. And all I could think as I watched him walking slowly towards the back door of our store was, no, Mr. Bradbury, thank you.
Hey, special points, Richard. Special points
gosh,
for the
thank
reference
you.
to
Oh my God, thank
1972
you,
Scrooge.
Richard. I remember that story. It is even stronger now. Oh my God, thank you. Thank you so much. I want to be able to say that one day. I just want to be yelled at the top of my lungs. Unload the vault, open it. I want to see things. Oh, bless you. Bless you, Richard. Thank you. Thank you. Richard,
Always my pleasure.
gentlemen. A round of applause. I'm going to bring up someone who I think truly is just like the grooviest guy in the world. I love Al because when we were in our physical space, which we will be again, he came on a regular basis just to watch us tell stories. And I was always so respectful of that he just seemed to be this regular presence at the salon. I was always really pleased when I saw him there, just contributing his listening and his presence at the salon. And he is a favored storyteller at different venues all around the city. So I'm very lucky and I'm very grateful that we have him here tonight strutting his wonderful storytelling stuff. Please welcome him, Mr. Al Underwood.
Hello, and thank you all very much for inviting me here tonight. I was challenged by tonight's topic more than I would have expected. I pondered to find a way into a story that would somehow be thoughtful, introspective, and yet speak to everybody. And I just felt stuck until a recent Instagram interaction with a celebrity that I'm acquainted with. I was reminded of this fun story that I've only shared a few times and never shared it publicly. It's the story of how I was part of fulfilling a child's wish come true and how it went completely beyond the expectations of everybody that was involved. You see, I worked at Universal Studios Hollywood as a VIP tour guide. I guided for industry executives, foreign and domestic dignitaries, celebrities, and special guests. This particular guest came via the Make-A-Wish Foundation, which grants wishes to terminally ill children. Most wishes are fairly easy to address and may come true, at least as I was told. However, this wish was particularly specific and seemingly impossible at first blush. Fortunately, only Universal was uniquely suited to make it come true. This 10-year-old boy wanted to go back to the future, and he wanted to go back to the future with the real Dr. Emmett L. Brown, the main character of the movie, and take along some of his closest friends. Fortunately, Universal was the studio that released the films and had recently, at the time, opened a motion simulator ride based on the movies. The Institute of Future Technology was the science lab looking building where time travel was made possible via convertible 8-passenger time machine DeLorean sports cars. The studio was able to secure Christopher Lloyd's commitment to spending some of the day with us and ride the attraction with the child and his friends. Perfect, I thought. You can't get better than that. After enjoying some of the theme park with the kids, we met Christopher Lloyd at our appointed time, and the kids went bonkers. I mean, and when Christopher Lloyd suggested that they all go on the ride together, kids jumped out of their skins. Then we're going to go back to the future with Doc Brown. A VIP driver whisked us to a private entrance at the attraction, and we enjoyed the pre-show together and the setup of the ride together. All the while, Christopher Lloyd was as gracious, as kind, and as attentive as anyone could hope to have. He was a delightful, charming, and giving person. Now, when it comes time for the kids to board the ride with Doc Brown, I retired to a hallway nearby to make arrangements for our next stop and kind of collect my thoughts. This gives me about 5 minutes of calm before the ride vehicle's empty and 100 excited passengers storm the hallway. I'm standing alone in a 300-foot long hallway that has one door at either end. Someone pops open a door, sunlight streaks in, and someone pokes their head in sneakily. They see me, and with a big grin ask, "Hey, can I sneak in a couple of my friends, get them on the ride?" I can't even believe my eyes. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "Are you supposed to be here with me and the group right now?" And they say, "No, I just have a couple of friends with me, and I was wondering if I could kind of skip the line and get on the ride." I said, "So you're not part of Make-A-Wish and the group that's here right now, and you're not supposed to be with me?" They said, "No." I said, "Come over here real fast." The person enters and approaches me. I say, "So you have no idea why I'm here, and you have no idea who's inside there right now riding the ride?" And of course they affirm no. I brought the person up to speed on what I do, and I said, "You are not going to believe who's about to walk out that door in about 30 seconds." They look completely flummoxed, but very interested. The doors open up, I hear kids carrying on, and Christopher Lloyd laughing. My new guest and I are now standing in a small exit hallway and hear kids going bananas. We're ready to intercept them. The kids come out, followed by Christopher Lloyd. My unexpected guest is standing right behind me as I greet the kids, and Christopher Lloyd makes eye contact with our new guest and exclaims with a thunderous, "Great Scott!" his tagline from the movies. Seeing our unexpected guests stops the kids cold in their tracks, and the guest bellows, "What are you buttheads looking at?" It's Thomas F. Wilson, Biff Tannen, the villain of the ride, and all three Back to the Future movies bellowing his famous tagline from the films. Now understand, these kids have just been chased by Biff Tannen for 5 minutes. At the end of the ride, he's apprehended inside the very science lab that the kids were just standing in. Yeah, they thought he'd escaped and was out to get them. The kids did double takes at each other to confirm that they were all seeing what they thought they were seeing. They screamed out loud and bolted for the exit. And I mean bolted. They went through Tom's legs, they went around my legs, up the walls, and straight out the building. Christopher and Tom embraced as they laughed and took a minute to kind of catch up as I gathered the kids outside. And I assure the kids that Biff really is a good guy now and made introductions all around. Tom was incredible. He was great with the kids, and he was very generous with his time. It was a mind-blowing, unexpected addition to a child's wish, to be sure, and all of us were stunned by the lineup of all of these events. And everyone looked at me like I did it. I think of it like this. What are the chances of running into your co-star on a movie lot where your iconic movie was made that has a theme park with a ride based on your movies that you star in at the exact moment that you step off that ride? A wish was certainly made that day and bumped up quite a bit by who knows who. I received a note later, several months later, from his mother thanking me for the day and telling me that he talked about it constantly all the way up to his very last day.
Oh gosh, Al Underwood, ladies and gentlemen, Al Underwood. Al, you have to come back as much as possible. Thank you. Ah, swell. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ah, I'm gonna bring up a woman who is like just super cool. I've loved Pat for a very long time, and if you don't know her, you should get to know her because she is a Renaissance woman in every sense of the word. She is a terrific director. She produces her own storytelling shows. She did a solo show at the Story Salon and blew everybody away. And I think that the most wonderful thing about Pat is that it is so easy for her to enthrall you. You're under her spell immediately. Please welcome her, Miss Pat Wilson.
Thank you. If I had to entitle this, it would be 0 degree. Let's see, how does it go? 6 degrees of separation, 0 degree of separation. Okay. Parts of this you've heard before if you've heard me, but not all of it and not this part of it. I was very fortunate that day. I had just been accepted on full scholarship into Circle in the Square acting school and needed to find an apartment and a job in order to stay there. I had hitchhiked to New York from my little 2-room farmhouse in Bahama, North Carolina, to audition for the school. Oh, the lists of affordable apartments available were few, and by the time I would get to them, they had already been rented. I could never figure out how a person could get there before me. Time was of the essence. I was going to be happy with anything with indoor plumbing. Glad to have left the stinky outhouse situation behind. I had been staying on the sofa of an ex-boyfriend's apartment in the village. My welcome was wearing thin. Late on this afternoon, I was walking dejectedly up 112th Street after losing out on another apartment when a woman pushing a stroller past me turned and came back. She said, "Excuse me, didn't you go to Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina?" I couldn't believe my ears. I could barely speak. It was like I had been swept up into some other plane of existence. Yeah, she said, "I thought I recognized you. We didn't have classes together, but I did see you around campus and in plays there. You drove a yellow Jeep, right?" As the conversation continued, I wound up with her apartment, not 2 doors away. Her husband was a student at Columbia University, and her apartment was part of Columbia student housing. She had a 2-year lease on it, but was getting a divorce to go back and live with her parents in South Carolina. If I would take over the monthly payments on the lease, I could have it. My psyche was spinning. She took me inside and showed me the 2-bedroom apartment with separate kitchen and bathroom. Ah, the bathroom with all the necessities in working order, fragrant-free, spacious. The whole apartment was enormous. I asked what the monthly amount would be, knowing I couldn't afford that. She said $100. I was doing mind cartwheels. Overjoyed, I kissed her and her baby, now nursing at her breast. Of course, I'll take it. She needed no references, no deposit. She was leaving her furniture as well. Anyone else would have gotten religion over this, not me. It takes tragedy for me to get religion, something with, no hope in sight. But the school was so fulfilling. Kevin Bacon was in all of my classes. He was 18 at the time. Another student, Anna Donnelly, and I became close friends. She was married and lived in Connecticut, but needed a room in the city. Well, I rented her the extra bedroom for $100 a month. She very seldom stayed overnight, so here I was living in New York rent-free on a full scholarship. I called my old college theater professor and told him of my good fortune. He was very pleased, but concerned that I had no job. Now, what he didn't know was that I had shipped a trunk filled with marijuana I had grown on the farm, already bagged to sell whenever needed, so I wasn't going to starve by any means. He called later that week to tell me of an old student of his who owned a bar near Wall Street. She needed a Saturday daytime barkeep. I was so anxious to get this job, and she was so indebted to him that once I called her, I was hired over the phone. Never having been inside a bar, I was a complete novice, but I did learn pretty quickly the tastes of the usual clientele. Mostly blue-collar folks, except for when the mafia came, and then I was relieved of my duties and sent home, and the owner took over. I think she had a deal with them of some kind, you think? I heard a lot of the same tunes on the jukebox. The bikers especially liked the Eagles and Jimmy Buffett. The owner's 7-year-old son dragged a stool around to perch upon to play the pool table against anyone who would play him. He was the all-time top winner, so the usuals wouldn't play him after a time. Now that sour beer smell soaked into the wood floors and walls of the bar that put me off on my first day soon became the smell of money. And whenever I hear Hotel California or Margaritaville, I am whisked back to Barnabas Rex on Chambers Street. One day on my way to class, Kevin Bacon jumped on my subway car and asked if I would play Tea and Sympathy with him for a class project. I would play the school teacher seducing the sensitive student. He was born charming and talented. He was always in the right place at the right time, always confident, always a winner. He dashed away to Oregon to shoot Animal House before we could perform together. I went to his celebration party at his loft. Kira was there. Those days were not seen by me then as the gifts they were. I see them now as I revisit them in storytelling. I will most likely see these days with their gifts when I revisit them. Pandemic, Donald Trump, and all.
Pat Wilson, thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you. I lived in New York around the same time then too. And I had a one-room apartment and the sink and the bathtub were in the kitchen. That was it. So you were made out like a bandit. Oh my God. And who knew that selling marijuana would be so financially lucrative?
Yeah.
I didn't know. You have a way about you, my dear. Thank you, Pat. We're going to continue this rock and roll show. This has been wonderful with the lovely Suzanne Wirtz, who is a producer of many successful storytelling shows herself. She is terrific. She also did a solo show at the Story Salon, and it was incredibly successful. She is a full-on complete delight, full-on complete perfection. Ooh la la! Please welcome her, Miss Suzanne Wirtz.
Thanks, Beverly. Thank you all so much. I'm excited to be here. I also want to do a quick shout out to Pam Bassick, who is in the house tonight, and it's her birthday. She's celebrating the story. So the story I'm going to tell is called Whirlwind of Money. We were out of money and out of options, standing in the lobby of the Golden Nugget, ready to head home after our weekend of budget-minded debauchery, when we remembered that 30 hours earlier, we'd pulled into the casino parking lot on fumes. We pooled our remaining money together for an immediate gas stop, but all we had was $1.75. That wasn't going to get us home, even at 1992 prices. My best friend since high school, Kathy Lopez, and I were used to flying by the seat of our pants and somehow things working out. We'd run out of gas countless times over the years, but generally we were close enough to walk home or to a phone booth where we could call for help. After college graduation, Kathy had moved to Berlin and I'd come to California with just $200 and a suitcase full of dreams. A dream that I'd land a job, find a place to live, and a car, all within that first week, and all with my ludicrously meager budget. I eventually pulled off all of those things, but for years, I lived on happy hour taquitos and all-you-can-eat Carl's Jr. salad bar buffets. I swiped toilet paper from my temp jobs, and I stored my clothes in the kitchen cabinets of my Hollywood studio apartment for lack of both furniture and kitchen supplies. Once, when I was down to my last dollar and wondering how I might eat until my next paycheck, I bought my first lottery scratcher. Like Charlie Bucket, desperately hoping for a golden ticket in that last Wonka bar, I leaned up against the graffiti-covered wall outside of the Pink Elephant liquor store at Franklin and Western, and I scratched at the silver polymer with my house key. Could it be? The scratcher said I'd won $100. I walked into the store and handed my ticket to the cashier, who promptly handed me 5 20s. The closest thing to a lottery that we had back in North Carolina was bingo night in the church hall. California was clearly a most magical place to live. I was walking on air as I strolled to the nearby Gelson's and I bought myself 2 whole bags of food. When Kathy came to visit, about 3 years into my California adventure, I was still broke, and I took her to my favorite happy hours, free entertainment at Venice Beach, and to the Comedy Store's belly room, where my friend Larry was performing in an open mic. He promised to cover our 2-drink minimum if we came to support him. When the MC introduced Larry, she said, "This young man may well be the next Barry Manilow." And Kathy and I, already well beyond that 2-drink minimum, heckled the host, "Boo, not Barry Manilow." We were on Sunset Boulevard hoping to see Axl Rose, not a has-been crooner from our parents' record collections. As Larry took the stage and was greeting the audience, the MC squatted down next to us and said, "Ladies, you need to be very careful what you say in this town because you never know who's in the audience." She signaled behind her with a cock of her head, and sure enough, 3 rows back, there was Barry Manilow. Clearly, what Kathy and I needed was to get out of town. We needed to get to Las Vegas, where we'd heard that the Golden Nugget had rooms for just $29.99 a night, and there were $4.99 all-you-can-eat buffets. And as long as you're gambling, they bring you free cosmopolitans and pretzels all night long. We poured quarters into the adjacent video poker machines, and drinks kept coming as we racked up 3 of a kind and full house victories. We lounged poolside with cocktails and nachos paid for with our quarter winnings. We soaked in the lights on the strip and window shopped at the extravagant new Caesar's Palace Forum. We squeezed in every moment of joy we could on our $60 budget, so much so that we forgot that we'd arrived on fumes. So there we were in the Golden Nugget lobby, knowing full well that video poker wasn't going to convert our handful of quarters into enough gas to make the 275-mile drive back to Hollywood. Both of our credit cards were maxed out. We didn't know anyone in Vegas. Prostitution was out of the question. We needed to get back before dark, and we didn't think 10 a.m. on a Sunday was a good time to launch such a career. As we walked through the casino, We debated the best use of the $1.75 in my pocket. We opted for the massive Glacier Gold slot machine by the door. It promised big payouts, no less than $20. At about $1.15 a gallon, that should get us home. We dropped in 4 quarters and pulled the lever. Lights flashed, music jangled, and the reels of crowns and cherries rolled. We held our breath. Time stood still. Over the casino speakers, En Vogue reminded us, "Ooh, you're never gonna get it," as the jackpot symbols fell into place. Without a match. En Vogue was right. Our hearts sunk. We now had 75 cents and little hope. As we turned toward the door, a shady-looking man in a tuxedo called out to us, "Last chance to enter for the whirlwind of money. Throw your names in for your chance to win." Everything in Vegas was a gimmick, we figured, as we dejectedly walked past him in his Carney caliber pitch, pushed open the golden doors to the rush of hot air and light. "Come on, ladies, don't go. Take a chance. You could be winners." And that was true. We weren't losers, not my best friend and me. No way. We traveled through East Germany to Vienna in a boxcar and made it there alive. We sailed around the Florida Keys with a Jamaican drug dealer and survived to tell the tale. Surely there was a chance that we could leave Las Vegas as winners. We turned back. "The drawing's about to take place. Throw your names into the mix," he said with a mischievous smile like Mr. Dark from Something Wicked This Way Comes. A crowd of people gathered around the phone booth style box. "Just write your names on these pieces of paper." And within moments, names were fluttering inside a bingo cage, and Mr. Dark reached in with a flourish and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Kathy Lopez," he called out. He ushered my best friend toward the chamber, gave her goggles, and told her to grab all the money she could grab and stuff it anywhere she could stuff it. Suddenly, air blew through the booth, and Kathy was barely visible in the whirl of 1s and 5s and 10s and 20s as she frantically grabbed cash, stuffing it in her bra and now fortuitously chosen MC Hammer pants. Her wavy hair flew wildly as the crowd cheered and an occasional $100 bill came into sight. When the cash ceased swirling, Kathy emerged flush with bills coming out of every pocket and sleeve. Holy crap! Could this be true? Will they actually let us keep all of this money? "Congratulations," shouted Mr. Dark into his mic as he thanked the sponsors and the crowds dispersed. He quickly segued into recruiting people for the 2 p.m. drawing. We rushed to the car, stunned by our good fortune. We counted our winnings in the back seat of my CRX, sweaty bunched up 1s and 5s mostly, but altogether $600. We subtracted the cost of Kathy's airplane ticket, our hotel stay and meals. We set aside the money that we were going to need for gas and snacks on the way home. And then we extended our trip a little bit longer. We headed out to the sparkling Forum shops where we bought ourselves matching Caesar's Palace white and gold glitter sweatshirts. We passed the cheap buffets and we sat down for a meal in a real restaurant. And when we got in my car for the drive home, Barry Manilow came on the radio crooning, "Looks like we made it." We turned that shit off and popped in a more appropriate cassette for our drive back to LA. "Welcome to the jungle," screamed Axl Rose. "You can taste the bright lights, but you won't get there for free." That is, unless, of course, you win a spot in the whirlwind of money.
Oh,
Thanks, y'all.
oh my God. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I can't. Okay, good. Sorry, I couldn't figure out how to do that. Suzanne Wirtz, oh my gosh. Do you know that it's been my daily fantasy for years? What Kathy Lopez did. I live in that fantasy. I live in that. And might I suggest perhaps you want to write that up as a feature film with Melissa McCarthy?
Okay.
I'm
All
just
right.
suggesting. I see it. I see it, and I would like to do a small part in it if possible. Also,
Oh, yeah.
when
You
you were
can
at
go
the
for
Laugh Factory and you made that comment about Barry Manilow, did you turn around and say, I meant Harry Manilow? That's a guy I think is sucky. Harry Manilow. Just wanted
Right
to
on.
point that out, sir. Thank you, Suzanne, so much. We have a few more people for this extravaganza of a show, which has been so wonderful. I'm completely entertained, I gotta tell you. I'm bringing up a man who is truly, I call him Mr. That fabulous Dan Tierman and other names because he is. If you know anything about Dan Tierman, and you should, he is an electrifying performer. I have loved him and what he does for many years. To me, he sets a really high bar of storytelling. I think he has tremendous charisma. He is a dazzling, dynamic performer in every way. And I'm so grateful every single time that he deigns to be on our show, because he could be anywhere, but he is here tonight for you. Dig him, everybody. Dig him. Dig Dan Tierman.
Thank you. I've got nothing to do either, but I'm not cleaning my apartment. Anyway, it's great to see you all. I don't need to reiterate that 2020 was certainly a challenge for all of us. For me, the hardest part was the loss of my dear dad at age 90, a part of life one must endure. And it left the question now how to take care of mom, who was suffering from increasing cognitive impairment and couldn't be left alone. And not to be maudlin, but I understood why it's been said that old age is a shipwreck. To me, it was like the Titanic, with my mother left floating on a life raft in the frigid waters with one oar. Up in beautiful Marin County with my brother in the next town over, I stayed in the apartment with mother to care for her for 3 months, but I really needed to get back to my own home in Los Angeles. At the pinnacle of my angst over this situation, with mother regularly falling and confused, I ultimately found myself literally punching myself in the head, screaming and tearing my flesh in frustration. You'd all have been quite disillusioned by my demeanor. Then this arrived in the mail. I don't know if, can you see it? Yes. Ezra, my cousin Ezra, wrote a book, and this is called Womb of Diamonds. And it's the story, his grandmother told him many, many stories over the years. She was a child bride from Syria, and she was shipped off with a man almost 2 decades older than he to Japan. And she didn't like him at all. Anyway, she turned into this magnificent, successful, brilliant lady. And he sent me this book with the inscription, Dear Danny, hope you enjoy this book and hope it helps pass the time in a positive way. If you think your mother might like it, please have her read it as well. While it can't replace what was lost, maybe it can be a distraction. Hope all is going well as it can be expected and you are grieving cathartically. Remember the good times past and those still to come. Love, Ezra. Well, when this arrived at the perfect time, the right place at the right time, and I showed it to my mother and said, this book is going to save us. And then that night, there was a total power outage, utter darkness in the apartment, which left mother and I sitting in silence and darkness. And I took out a flashlight and started reading Womb of Diamonds. As I read the introductory chapter, mom and I found that we loved it. It calmed us both down, it cleared her mind up beautifully, and gave us something else to think about. I sensed that the subject of the book, Ezra's amazing grandmother's spirit, had arrived to help us. Then at the beginning of July, we moved mother into a board and care house up in Marin, which was tough, but it had a separate entrance and a beautiful orange cat named Marigold was there to be her friend. And then settling her in, I read more of the book. I kept reading the book to her each night until I had to finally go back to Los Angeles. Of course, I felt sad and kind of guilty about it and leaving her in this new strange place. But the consolation was that I told her, I'll just keep reading this book to you. I'll call you every night and read. And that's what we did. We read the whole book, finished 600 pages of Womb of Diamonds. And we felt very good about that and we enjoyed it. Then we thought, uh-oh, we need another book. So I looked around and we settled on this one, Bill Clinton, My Life. Now, I had this book for almost 20 years and I thought, I'm never going to read this book. It's too much policy. It's 956 pages. And I had met him, I got it signed, and at the book signing, I was like number 505 in the line, and I didn't know what to say to Bill Clinton, So I got up to him and I said, "We're both left-handed Leos." He didn't even look at me, and as I walked past, I heard him say, "Good." Anyway, I started reading this book and Mother liked it and she kept going, wow, oh my God, how much energy did they have to have? Oh, they never stop. When did they sleep? And we learned a lot about politics and we read every single word of that one. Then we had to find another one and we chose this one, Alan Alda, Things I Overheard While Talking to Myself. Alan Alda is a lovely, wonderful human being. And he wrote all these nice essays he did a lot of speeches for commencements and different businesses and companies. And he talked about how he came to what he was going to talk about. And it's very philosophical. And Mother and I just thought he was a grand writer. We loved him. Then we needed another book. And my friend had gotten me a copy of Some of These Days, the autobiography of Sophie Tucker. Now, some of you youngsters might not know Sophie, but she sang, some of these days, you're gonna miss me, honey. So now I'm reading Some of These Days with Mother. And, after each chapter, Mother says, I can't believe that really happened. And it's wonderful because it's like we're time traveling. We're experiencing the whole history of show business from minstrel shows and burlesque and vaudeville and radio and nightclubs and cabarets and television and movies and this amazing lady. So we're really having a great time and it's helpful to all of us. And like Sophie said or sang in her wonderful song, My Yiddish Mama, oh, I know what I owe. What I am today, to that dear little lady, so old and gray, to that wonderful Yiddish mama of mine. If anybody has any suggestions for our next book, please let me know. In the meantime, have a safe, healthy reading and writing 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Dan Tierman, thank you. So sweet. Thank you, my love. We're going to wrap up this wonderful evening of the theme. It was the right time. It was the right place. And I have to introduce there are two people all at once. Not just one, not just another, two people at once, tandem, I think they call it. Rick and Laura Hall. Rick, by the way, does a very successful, really wonderful and popular podcast called So Says Rick. And hop onto that podcast because it's always interesting. It's funny. He's just really sharp. And Rick has this terrific ability as a storyteller that is truly a gift. I think it's just this innate gift. He was born with it, of being able to tell a story so intimately, so casually, so easily that you are immediately transported into his story. You just like sort of automatically lean forward to listen. It really is. I've watched him do it and he gets on stage and bam, you're right there and you're listening. So it's always wonderful to have him. And Laura's done a couple of stories at the Salon. And each time she's done a story, I stand in the back with my producers, Dan Tierman and Tony Figueroa, and we both stand there. And after Laura told a story and we thought, well, she's pretty irresistible. So they're both here tonight. I am more than delighted. Please welcome them, Miss Laura Hall and Mr. Rick Hall.
I just want to, before we start, I want to say of all the stories we've heard tonight, they've been very touching and everything. But the one thing that I'm going to take home with me, I'm already at home. The one thing I'm going to really remember is Pat Wilson saying, I had a trunk of marijuana set up that I would drink.
You got to appreciate her resourcefulness, right? All right. Well, if Rick and I had met when we were young, we never would have gotten along. It was definitely the wrong time and the wrong place, like when we were kids or teenagers.
Right. I grew up on a farm downstate Illinois, and our biggest social event of the week was going to church. And as a matter of fact, my fantasy, if I may say, was that one day I would marry a girl from the youth group at church.
Now, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and we did not go to church when I grew up. And, you know, I didn't even think about marriage. I was not one of those girls who dreamed about the white wedding dress. Wasn't even on the radar for me.
When I got to high school, I broadened my social horizons. I joined the FFA, the Future Farmers of America, and I played trombone in the marching band for the high school marching band.
I played French horn in the marching band.
We
So
both brass instruments.
We did have one thing in common.
There you go. Oh boy.
But I was a hippie girl and I was not into it because I had a lot better things to do on a Friday night than play at the football games.
Okay, I had nothing better to do on a Friday night than play at the football games. I loved it.
So I sold my French horn, bought my first electric piano, and joined a rock band.
Okay, what kind of girl sells her brass instrument to be in a rock band?
This one. So then I went away to college, but you know, I did not want to live in the dorms because you know the dorms were for nerds. So we rented a house, me and 5 other musicians, and our rent was $200 a month.
Each?
No, total. So we were each paying $33.33, and we were still scrambling for change in the couch at the end of the month.
I didn't have to scramble for change because I lived in the dorms
Nerd.
for 4 years. This is my part of the story. I loved living in the dorms, the social life about it. And I wasn't a nerd. I liked it. I was going to be a veterinarian when I went to college. And I auditioned for a play, though, my first semester. And the next thing I knew, I was getting cast in plays, working with these directors. And by the end of my sophomore year, I declared that I was a theater major, which thrilled my parents because, you know, really, I mean, as a veterinarian, you never know where your next job is coming from.
And I was living in Chicago. I was on my 3rd college. I was on the 5.5-year plan. And and I got hired at Second City as a waitress, which was the perfect college gig, right? And then later on, they hired me to start subbing as a musician with the touring company. But it was perfect. I was doing maybe 1 gig a month with the touring company. We would go to like the Wisconsin Dells and do a show or something.
You're such a name dropper.
Glamorous. But then the really cool thing was on Monday nights, the touring company got to do a show in the main theater when they had the night off. So we got to play on the main stage on Monday nights.
So right about that time, I graduated from college and I went to Chicago to be an actor. And I was at auditions and in acting classes and everything. And I was sitting with some actors having coffee one day, and somebody mentioned that Second City was having auditions. I loved Second City. I didn't know that much about improv, but I thought, what the heck? I'll go audition for him, just for the fun of it. I knew so little that I didn't realize I didn't know enough to not know enough to go audition for Second City. So I went, and actually not knowing that there were any stakes to it, but I ended up having a good audition. I had fun.
There you go.
I should do that more often with my auditions.
So it was right before my senior year of college, my final senior year of college. And the touring company got together. We were having a rehearsal to get ready for the fall season of touring. And I was going to be the sub again. Everything was good. We're half an hour into the rehearsal, and the main piano player and the boss have a huge fight. The piano player storms off. The boss turns to me and says, "So you want to go on the road?"
So it was the right place at the right time, right?
Well, except for the fact that I was supposed to start my final year of college in about 3 weeks. So.
And you didn't want to have a sixth final year of college.
Exactly. So I ended up contacting the head of the department, and I somehow talked them into letting me do my senior year as like an internship, independent study kind of thing. So then the next Monday night when we were playing at the main stage, I went to my boss and I said, I'm ready to go. I'm going to go on the road.
As luck would have it, that Monday afternoon, I got a call from the director of Second City who said they wanted to hire me. I was thrilled. And they asked me to come do the improv show with the cast that night, which was Laura's cast. I had no idea. And I remember I walked backstage that first night and I went into the green room and I looked around. I'm like, these are the people I'm going to tour with. I like that hippie piano player over there.
Can you see the stars are starting to align, right?
Yeah. Well, we did a stupid thing. We had a road romance.
Yeah, they never work out.
I don't think our cast even knew. Well, I'd like to think they did.
They did,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
But
But somehow it did work out for us. So we were living the life, man. We were young, living in Chicago. We were working as a musician and an actor. Everything was fantastic.
I didn't have a trunk of pot coming to save us, but we were making a living. It was great. And so I lived in Little Italy. And one day I got out of my car and laying on the ground right outside there was a beautiful woman's ring. And in Little Italy, everybody knows everybody and everybody knows everybody's business. So I walked around, carried that ring with me for a couple of weeks and asked people about it, but nobody claimed it. Nobody knew anything about it. So after a couple of weeks, I had it in my pocket one day and I said, hey, Laura, you want this ring?
And I did. It was a pretty little ring. It happened to fit just right. So I started wearing it. But of course, everyone started saying, so has Rick popped the question?
Yeah.
When's the big date?
Mm-hmm.
Well, neither of us were anywhere near ready for that.
We'd only been dating a few years at that point.
We were not there. So I took that ring off and put it in my jewelry box. It was the wrong time and the wrong place for that ring.
Exactly. I got an agent in LA. I got out of Second City and I ended up being bi-coastal. I would spend half my time in Chicago, half in LA. And so we did the long distance relationship,
which was a big drag.
Quite a while, but we pulled through it.
We did.
And I remember one day in LA, I was sitting in church with my friends around me and my church family, and sitting there, I still felt like I was alone. I felt lonely. And I realized, like, a light went off. Oh my gosh, I'm going to ask Laura to marry me. I want her to be here with me. I went home for Christmas that year and was there for the whole holidays. And New Year's Eve, we both had gigs that night, separate gigs, separate places. But before we left, I got down on one knee and asked Laura if she would marry me.
And my response was, we could get married, couldn't we?
Duh.
Like it was a big surprise. We'd been dating for almost 7 years by that point. But it was like we were busy. I don't know.
We had things to do.
I don't know what was happening.
So before I asked her to marry me, though, I went and snuck in her jewelry box and I found that ring. And I gave it to her and I said, would you wear this until you find the ring you want?
And I said, I love that ring. That is the ring I want.
And I found out what a good actor I was when instead of jumping up and down and going, yeah, free engagement ring, woo! I actually said, oh, honey, that's so romantic. And you know, there's a fine line between romantic and cheap.
But I loved that ring and it meant a lot to me. And I'm a practical Midwestern girl. I was like, great, we'll use the money to go towards the wedding instead.
So finally, it was the right time and the right place for that ring.
And the right time and the right place for us.
Oh my God. What a perfect way to end the show. Oh my God. That is wonderful. Oh my God. Laura Hall and Rick Hall, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
How long have you been married?
It'll be 30 years in July.
Oh my God, 30 years. I think 30 years is a trunk full of marijuana. I think that is that right?
Yes.
I think so.
maybe Pat can set us up.
Just suggesting. That's all I do. I want to.
Yeah, Beverly, it's a trunk full of Acapulco gold.
Sorry. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, how do you know how to be so specific? That's what I want to know.
None of your goddamn business.
Oh, don't turn on me now. I'm just asking. Everyone, thank you so much. Oh my God, what a terrific show. Blessings, blessings, blessings. This makes me happier than you can imagine. A huge shout out, everybody who's listening around the world. A huge shout out to Lila Silverin, Richard Johnson, Al Underwood, Pat Wilson, Suzanne Wirtz, Dan Tierman, and Laura Hall and Rick Hall. Thank you all. And again, a huge round of applause and thank you to Amber Greenberg, who makes this all possible. We're going to do this again in February, and I'm going to put up a video in a couple of days about what February's theme will be. And you will see all these people, or you might see different people, a little bit of the same, whatever. Please talk to Dan Tierman. He will come over and read something to you. I wish you would, Dan.
Anytime.
Help me go to sleep. Help me sleep. Thank you all. Truly, blessings beyond blessings. If you like the show, please come back next time. Oh, my name is Beverly Mickens. I am grateful to all of you. Let us clutch together and tell more stories for next month. Remember always, most stories, and then most stories.
More stories.
Big blessings. Suzanne.